Just let me know when you're ready. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome. Welcome all of you that are here in person, and welcome all of you that are streaming online. I know we've got over 100 that are streaming online, so thank you for joining us here. I am Janice Sykes-Ross, and I'm the Executive Director of the West Philadelphia Culture Alliance, and we operate and manage the Paul Robeson House and Museum. So welcome, everybody, give yourselves a round of applause. So we are closing out Women's History Month, and I'm going to tell you right now, we need more than a month. We need more than a month. It's like with Black History Month, right? There's so much that we need to celebrate. Hopefully we will be celebrating the first African American woman to the highest court in this land. Yes, that's right. We're going to celebrate that and claim that right now. But today we have some wonderful, just tremendous, trailblazing women that we're going to be honoring, and we're going to learn more about them. But before we do that, I have two wonderful trailblazing women that are here to my right and to my left, and I want to take an opportunity to introduce them. What we do here at the Paul Robeson Houses Museum is we have programs like we have here today. And we also honor the legacy and the life and the philosophy of Paul Leroy Robeson. 2 syllables, Robeson. And Vinoka will correct us if we don't get this correctly. And so we're glad that you're joining us. We also have the 124th birthday celebration that is coming up, and that's going to be on April the 9th. So forgive me for doing my shameless plug, but celebrating Robeson's birthday is probably one of the most important things that we do here at the house. So please join us back on April the 9th. Now, having said all of that, I'm going to introduce Vinoka Michael, who has the pleasure of calling Paul Robeson Uncle Paul, and he called her niece. And then I'm going to introduce Yvonne. I knew this. And Yvonne is with Hakeem's Bookstore, and Yvonne and the Robeson House is doing this program collaboratively. So, Vinoka.
Thank you, and welcome everybody to the Paul Robeson House. He was very specific, and I just brought a letter in so that Janice can see that he was specific about his name. Where we're sitting, this used to be our dining room, and we celebrated his 75th birthday here. And people such as Dr. Philip Hogarth, Bishop Alfred G. Dunstan, and other individuals were here along with family members to celebrate his 75th birthday. That was the last of his birthdays that he celebrated here. I had the pleasure of being his go-getter, so anything that he needed, my mother saw that I went to get it. And so I have enjoyed being the executive director here of a place that I spent many, many years in. And I thank you all for coming and celebrating with us. So thank you very much.
And you forgot to mention that this lady, speaking about a trailblazer, this lady was the first woman of boxing, first Black woman of boxing, and owned and operated the Blue Horizon. So we have a legend right here with us as well.
Hello everyone, and I'm glad to be here today to represent Hakeem's Bookstore. We're located at 210 South 52nd Street in West Philadelphia, which is only about 2 or 3 blocks from here. And my father, the late Dawood Hakeem, opened his bookstore in 1959. We are the first and the oldest African American bookstore in Philadelphia and on the East Coast. And we are thriving thanks to the support of the Robeson House and other organizations in the area. And we promised my dad, who unfortunately passed away in 1997, that we would keep the store going as long as we can, and we're still trying to do that.
So we're going to ask you after the talk today, the parlor talk, then we have some of Diane's books in the back. And you must purchase the books from Hakeem's Bookstore. You can't get them anywhere else. So we're going to ask that you purchase some of the books back there now that we have on the table. And if you purchase them, then Diane will sign them. Won't you, Diane? She promises that she will. But if you get them from anywhere else, you won't get her signature. So thank you. Thank you, ladies. Thank you, ladies. So we are a primarily volunteer organization. I do want to say that we have a very small but very efficient staff here, but primarily this organization runs off of volunteers. And so I am constantly always asking if anyone would like to volunteer, please do. Please call us and we would love to have you. There's much work to be done. And speaking of volunteers, today it is my pleasure to introduce to you and present to others one of our very staunch volunteers. Her name is Sherry L. Howard. She is an art and history collector, and she, for more than a decade, she has written a blog called Auction Finds. She has published a book that talks about her auction finds. If you go into Terry's house, you think you're in a museum. I mean, it's absolutely beautiful. And she tells us how we can get really wonderful artworks for cheap price. So you want to look out for her book, and she's going to tell you where you can find her book. Sherry was a reporter. I talk to Sherry often, and she is still a reporter. Once a reporter, always a reporter. She worked for a newspaper in Georgia. She's from the South, like myself, in North Carolina, and then she resides here in Philadelphia. She worked here in Philadelphia, and she resides in New Jersey. She was a writer with the Philadelphia Inquirer, and she did manage their online debt. Sherry has been a volunteer at the house here for a long, long time, and most of the curation and the display that you see here was produced by Sherry Howard and Vernoka Michael. And so after the book talk, if you want to take a little walk around the house, please do. And our docent, who is Terry Goering in the back, she will show you around. And without further ado, let me introduce to you Sherry Howard.
Thank you. Thanks, guys. I'm glad to see everybody here to listen to a wonderful talk. It's going to be a conversation between Diane, McKinney-Whetstone, and me. I'm quite sure all of you have read at least one of Diane's books. You know that she is an excellent writer. And we're going to talk about where all this stuff comes from because I know it's not easy to do. But Diane is the author of 7 novels. Her latest, Our Gin, will be published in July. She mines the city of Philadelphia for her material. And you read the book, so you can recognize places and streets that she mentions in her book. And also probably some people that you kind of think you know. The blocks and neighborhoods themselves become characters as she tells stories of everyday people existing in families and communities. Characters faltering, yielding to their desires, falling, fighting, climbing, reaching for their better selves. She was twice awarded the American Library Association Black Caucus Literary Award for Fiction. She is a recipient of the Pennsylvania Council on the Arts grant. Her work has appeared in The Atlantic, Essence Magazine, Philadelphia Magazine, and the Philadelphia Inquirer. She is a past lecturer in the writing program at the University of Pennsylvania. She lives with her husband Greg in Philadelphia, and she also has twin sons and twin children. Who, when she started to, I'm going to ask her about that. So I don't want to answer the questions for why. So here is Diane.
Thanks so much. Put this picture.
Do we need a microphone? Could you hear us from here? So Diane's gonna be, okay, so Diane's gonna be reading, so she can't open the book and use the microphone, so I don't think.
Right, yeah, and I have my children will tell you, my voice carries.
Okay. So Diane's going to read for us first from Tumbling, which was her first book.
Thank you so much, Sherry, and thank you all for being here. Thank you, Janice, for inviting me to participate, and I encourage everyone who is watching online to stop by this incredible place. Just the sense of history as I sit here in this room, everyone should experience. So I'll read just a little bit from Tumbling, my first novel, first published in hardback in 1996. And I'll just read from the beginning. The black pre-dawn air was filled with movement. Its thin coolness rushed through the streets of South Philly, encircling the tight, sturdy row houses. In 1940, the blocks were clean and close. The people who lived here scrubbed their steps every morning until the sand and the concrete sparkled like diamond pins. Then some went to work, mopping floors and cooking meals for rich folks, or cleaning fish at the dock, or stitching fine leather shoes, or pinch-pleated draperies at the factories on the north side. Some answered phones or crumpled paper for the government. Some tended house and nursed babies. A few were really nurses. One or two taught school, unless it was on the weekend. On the weekend, the blocks came to life. They crammed into the Crub Royale, where red-headed olives danced in gold-colored liquid, and the music flowed like bubbly, and brown faces laughed for real. Not the manner teehees of the workday, but booming laughs. And Sunday they shouted in church and felt the sweet release, where grand hats rocked and high heels stomped, or went clickety-clack, depending on how the spirit hit. Right now they slept. Especially if they'd been in Club Royale earlier. They were in a heavy sleep as the moving air wrapped around their chimneys and stroked their curtained windows and slid down the banisters. It breezed past the church where the bricks were gray and jutted into the dark air and even shone from the dew that was just beginning to settle. It shimmied over Pop's, the corner store famous for its glass jars filled with sweet Pickles pig feet, and then dipped past the funeral home owned by the Saunders. And then the air turned on through a short block where card-playing Rose lived. The light from her basement meant the kings and queens and aces were slapping her fold-up table, adorned with piles of red and green chips. Noon, then the night air moved all through Lombard Street and bounced up and down the long block where Noon and Herbie lived. Right now, it caressed a brown cardboard box being slipped onto Noon and Herbie's middle step. Noon was fast asleep this Saturday morning, still 2 hours before her faithful church bells would give her the early riser's wake-up call, so she didn't hear the quick swishes of leather against concrete rushing straight to her home. Nor did she stir when the rustling sound got louder as sweaty palms shifted the box gently along the steps so that it wouldn't tip. But if Noon or anyone else on the whole of Lombard had been only half awake, she surely would have heard the singular whisper tinged with a sadness that was dark as the night. The air heard it and swallowed it up and whipped around the corner to push Herbie on home.
Wonderful. Red-hatted olives. You know, it seems those types of descriptions seem to come so naturally to you, Diane. Where did it come from? Where did this beautiful writing come from?
You know, I wish I knew, because if I knew, I would.
Okay. Yeah, I was asking her about her descriptions. They're so visual. She talked about a red-headed olive. I wouldn't have thought of that. You know, to me, it's just a green olive in a glass, a martini glass. So, and also you mentioned that you came from a family of storytellers who could just use so much detail that you could taste what they were saying. Here in your story, you could taste and see and just visualize. Talk a little bit about, you know, how that influenced you and where it comes from.
Absolutely. I mean, I wish I knew exactly from whence it came, because then I would just do it all the time. Well, a lot of the writing is just sitting there struggling and seeing things, and now how do I render this thing that I see, or how do I render this feeling, or this voice in my head, or this atmosphere, or whatever it is.
much of the writing happens before I actually even sit down to the page. I mean, it just has to do with perception and being open and just allowing myself to be willing to experience things.
So do you do a lot of reading?
I do. I read a lot, and I also try to observe a lot. I mean, I try to just remain open to just to how things work, how things look, like to involve all of my senses, you know, the feel of things, the taste, the sound. So I'm conscious of doing that because I never know when I can call on something. And yet my parents, yes, they were very, very, they were talkative people, they were descriptive people. My father could tell a story and you would just hear, he would tell about how he was a tremendous thrower. And how if he threw a rock, if someone turned the corner, the rock would turn the corner. But he would actually describe how the air sounded once he threw the rock. And so I just grew up with their stories, and they're just very, very vivid descriptions.
Well, speaking of air seems, and you mentioned it when you were reading from Tumbling, air seems to be a character in your stories. Talk a little bit about that.
The air is a character for sure. Just because the air holds so much, it's mysterious, and you're generally not aware of it because you don't see it. But it's just the sense of it and what the air holds and what it doesn't hold. That just makes I can be like really creative. When I'm writing and it's foggy, I feel like that. That's when I get some of the best writing done because I'm then just actually aware of the air and mist and those kinds of things. What the air holds that we're aware of, and then also the things that the air holds that we just don't know that just feel like a mystery. And so I'm always trying to depict things that on the surface are not exactly what they seem.
And you also describe, the early morning and the late evening. 'Cause I remember one description, I think it was in Lazaretto. You talked about the dusk. There was black around it, there was purple and red, and the rest of most of us just see the dusk. So when you talk about seeing what other people don't see, you have to be a person who not only notices what people are doing, but also what the intangible things like a setting sun looks like.
Sure, yeah. That when I was working on Tumbling, Sherry, most of it, I had to do very early in the morning. That was the only time of day that I owned. I was busy, had young children, married, demanding job, and so the very early morning hours was, that part of the day I owned, and I would get up 5 o'clock and work until 7, and so I often was there, sitting at a desk as the sun was rising, and I realized that things happen, something about the transition from night to day, that there's something that happens too with me, like a kind of transition, and then the same thing again in the evening hours. Like this happens like every day. The sun rises, it sets. It's a very typical thing, but yet within that very typical daily occurrence, it's like they're miracles. That this transition happens. So I like to be alive to that. But with Tumbling, I really was watching the sky change as I sat there and wrote. So yes.
And so, do you still, write early in the morning?
I still find that is my most.
So what's happening? Or is your mind clearer? Are you more creative? A lot of people say that that's early morning is a good time to do it.
It is. I think that it is also early morning is when I'm not yet engaged in the literal world. I'm not engaged in actually what the day is. I'm not like enmeshed in all of the chaos of life. And there's a stillness that I really need. There's a quiet that I really need. There's like this, it's very solitary, and I really need that when I'm working. And I just need to be, I don't have, like people ask, I don't have like rituals or superstitions, except that I like to be the first one in the room when I write. Because I feel if anyone else goes in there before me, they're going to disrupt whatever like that the magic is that perhaps I can grab onto.
for that writing session.
So are you writing in the office, or do you have a space?
I do. I have a space. I
okay.
have a room.
So do you lock the
That's-
door so nobody gets
No,
out for you?
I don't have to do that anymore. No, because my husband knows better. So he doesn't. But when my children were smaller, actually my desk was in the corner of the dining room,
Is it right?
and it's set under the window, and there, it was a beautiful tree, and that's where my desk was, and I would like go to. It was just like this magic space, this small space that it was mine, and it was where things happen. So, and I think that can be anywhere. It doesn't have to be a specific office, but that can be anywhere where I'm alone, where it's early and it's quiet, and things can happen.
So where did the story of Tumbling come from?
Actually, Tumbling, I when I was working on first writing Tumbling, I didn't know anything about writing. I mean, it was like, I'm going to write. Finally giving myself into this internal thunder that I had been ignoring for some time. And I just started writing, and I would write these descriptions about the steps and the diamond color, the diamond like pins in the
like
steps,
that,
and absolutely. And all of those descriptions came to me, and I realized I was writing about my mother's time and in South Philadelphia, 1940s and 50s, and she was very proud to be born and raised in Philadelphia and to be from South Philadelphia, and they called it very affectionately downtown. And if things happened in West Philadelphia, she'd say, see, that would have never happened downtown. Downtown. And when we lived downtown, we were like, well, if downtown was so special, like, why are we in West Philly? And she said, well, they were gonna build the road. And so since they were gonna build this road, we moved because the road was coming. And so we always heard about her stories and like how clean her neighborhood was, and this getting out every morning to scrub the steps was actually a communal act. It was like how they stayed connected as a community. The church was very central. Music was very central. She used to say it was so safe that when it was very hot outside, and this is actually before air conditioners, maybe people didn't have window fans, people could sleep outside, and it was entirely okay. So she always talked about this idyllic downtown, and I realized early on that I was writing about her. I was writing about her community, her downtown, and then the whole notion of the road running through this very special neighborhood became part of the plot as I remembered her stories.
So did you have to do much research on your own to sort of fill in the blanks?
I did do some. Initially, I love the act of writing where I can imagine. Okay. But then, of course, I have to make sure to have the facts right. I'm often amazed at how close the imagination can come. But my father was still alive during the writing of Tumbling, so I could talk to him about what the neighborhood was like. Towards the end, when my editor said, "Oh, I just want a really particularized," I went to the library, and actually my family helped. My teenage then son and daughter, son is here now, came with me to the library, and one was assigned to look up, like what kind of fashion did they wear, what sports teams were playing, and they went through the microfilm like pros, and was, Mommy, this, and and helped me actually with the finishing the research. So it did take research just to make sure that I had the facts right. But the research is actually my least favorite part of it. I mean, with Lazaretto, that was like so research intensive. Without my husband, I wouldn't have gotten through that book because he loves that. But I'd much rather imagine it and just think about how things maybe were. And
so the books are a family affair.
They are, yes, they are. I mean, even now, my sister Elaine is here, and she was reading Our Jen when it was still like just a seed and reacting to it, and those early reactions are very helpful for me.
So talk a little bit about how you were influenced, how the city of Philadelphia, which is prominent in your books, how you're influenced by the city.
I'm when I first start writing, since I don't know much about the plot or I don't know the characters, I really need to start with what I do know. And what I do know is the place. And I mean, since I was born and raised in Philadelphia, I know the city and kind of its, what it, like its eccentricities as I've experienced. You know, Philly is a really, presumes to be a world-class city, but it can have a very provincial feel, particularly within the neighborhoods. And it's also a place of just so many contraries. You know, there's so much money in Philadelphia, and there's so much poverty in Philadelphia. And so those contraries are also something that I engage as I'm writing. But it's just that I need to know the sense of place. I need to like evoke something, because before I find my footing with a novel, I'll just write pages and pages just describing the place. And would love if more of that could get into the book, but my editor is like, going on too long here. How many ways can we like hear about the air here? Okay, let's move on.
So now you've done, well, I guess our Jen would make seven books. Did it, and you were very successful with juggling. I said jumbling. I meant jumbling. Jumbling. So was it difficult to write the second book? You done so well with the first. Was there some apprehension? Can I do it again?
Yeah. The second book was actually the most difficult because Tumbling had such success, and there was this sense of, can I do this again? Yeah. I mean, will I be a one-book wonder? And I mean, everyone, Tumbling, oh, you write another book? You can't top that Tumbling. and I think I internalized some of that, and it was just, you know, with Tumbling, I had like no notion of anything. I was just writing for the pure joy of writing. With the second book, I mean, I had then a contract. I had a deadline. I had an advance I'd already spent. I mean, I had like, there were like real heavy things pressing on me as I wrote Tempest Rising. And so I think I'm most proud of that book, because I was able to actually write a book that I was ultimately satisfied with, and that, okay, you know, even if I don't do another one after this, I did do one after the first. So.
And also your books give a cross-section of Black people living in Philadelphia. You know, even the passage that you mentioned, you talk in your own beautiful way, you talked about the types of jobs that they had, you know, how they spent their leisure time. Is that, you know, what you're going after, to show that, you know, Black people are different shades of brown, and also there are different types of people?
Sure. I think that you know, when I start off, when I had tried to like impose my worldview, the writing is just not successful. And so I think that those things that ultimately land on the page that work are things that I'm allowed to percolate, so they're coming up rather than me as author imposing. And so that, and that's just how I experience life. I mean, you know, Black people, we're not a monolith. Black people we come in every variety. And so that I think that falls on the page as well. But the thing that I think binds us is that we're still Black people in America. And so no matter what, that is always going to be, I think, a connector. So I think that comes across just because that is,
that's a good point. I'm sorry.
that is how I have experienced life.
So do you see your books as whose purpose is to educate, to entertain? What are you trying to impart?
I think I'm trying to, you know, actually I'm trying to tell stories, and as I have come to discover more and more with each book, I'm trying to learn things myself. Because when I write, when I start off writing thinking that I know what it is, and I know exactly what the story is, and I know where it's headed, these roadblocks jump up because I don't know. And I mean, it can take it can take 2, 3, 4, 5 years to write a novel. And so it's pretty presumptuous to think that I know everything I need to know to finish a novel at the outset, because how will life change? How will I change? What will I discover? Like, all of these things then need to come into what the novel will be, because it really is a reflection in some ways just of my imagination and my interior world that is, I hope, always grasping to know more. And so, so I think that I want to tell stories, and I want to tell stories. I want to tell stories that have an honesty to them. I want to tell stories about Black people and about our communities and about our experiences, certainly. And I want to do what I've just always found that for me. I found more honesty in fiction, and I know, as a journalist, I know that you probably like, no. But for me, sometimes the facts get in the way. I mean, the facts get in the way of what the honest core of a thing is, because facts can be manipulated, and it depends on who's hearing the facts, who's giving the facts. But the honesty is the thing for me. The honesty at the core is what I'm going through about human nature. And with each novel, I learn just more and more about human nature, and actually more and more about myself.
Well, tell us a little about what you learned about yourself.
Well, when I was working on Blues Dancing, which is a story of these star-crossed lovers who fall into a heroin addiction. It goes back and forth between the 70s and 90s. Fall into a heroin addiction in their undergraduate lives, and then rediscover each other later on. I mean, when they're both doing okay. And I was working on that book, and I was not having much. I mean, the writing just wasn't going where I needed for it to go. And I realized that I was writing it from a sense of, because I knew people who I'd gone to school with, who had fallen into a heroin addiction. I was writing the novel from a sense of how could they, this really judgmental stance. And I was working on the book. I stumbled back to, which I've talked about before, when I was actually an undergraduate, and I'd taken a course. It was a calculus course. I had no business taking because I was an English major. But someone, had told me that this would be what we used to call a gut course. So all you had to do was pass one quiz, and you never had to go back to the class again. And this is maybe during the time when I was not the best student that I could be. And I said, I'm taking this course because it will fulfill the science requirement that I needed to fulfill. I was an English major. And I took the course, and I didn't go to many of the classes. And finally, it was the last class I went to take the quiz, and I was getting the flu. And so I was very sick. I had a headache, I had a fever, and I asked the professor if I could take a read. He said, "No, I'm tired of students doing this. You should have been here. You should have taken a quiz before and passed it. No, you cannot. You'll fail the course. You're failing the course." And I was devastated. I had never failed anything, and I was devastated. I went back to my apartment, on-campus apartment, and I called my friend, and they said, "You know what? Come over. You're gonna forget all about that course once you get what I have. You will forget all about that course and fail in that course." And I was sick. I was headachy, sweating. And I put my coat back on to go over to this friend's dorm, and the phone rang, and it was my mother. And my mother never called during the day because I was, in class. She called in the evening. And she said, "Hi, Doll, how are you doing?" And just hearing her voice, I just broke down hysterically, and I told her everything that happened. I was going to fail this course, and my life was over. And she stopped, and she said, "What's his name?" She wanted, of course, and I couldn't, give her the professor's name, but she said, "Look, you go get in bed right now. You're sick. You go get in bed. Don't worry about the course. I'll call later and talk to your roommates and see how you're doing." And that's what I did. I thought about that as I was working on Blues Dancing, And I realized, I don't know what the friend had for me over there. I just know that I was in a very vulnerable place. I was failing the first thing I'd ever failed major, in my life. And everything that meant. Plus I was sick, so I was weakened. My defenses were weakened. Everything about me was ripe for doing whatever he had there that, we could do. And, but yet my mother called, and instead I went to bed. And so I didn't go over there. And when I realized that, it was like, so now I can write this book from not how could they, but for the grace of God, there's me. And so I learned that. I learned as I was working on that book about experiences that I judge other people for. You know what? It's not a whole lot separating me from that person that I presume to judge. And so I try also not to judge the characters, to have an empathy for the characters, even the ones like Herbie who does, less than stellar things. But that has taught me about, just about the nature of empathy, the nature of compassion, and also, the sin of judging, really and truly. And I learned that actually through writing. And so, that's just an example, but there are many where in the midst of a book, when I'm trying to work something out, I discover something that then reveals myself to me. Which then helps me to then power through and get through that, whatever that mountain I'm trying to climb to write a book.
Okay. So are there any of the characters in your book people from real life?
Yeah. Not really. They may start off as people that I know or have known, but once they start interacting with each other, and start interacting with the sense of place, the city, the house, whatever it is, whatever they're surrounded with. Once those interactions happen, then the people actually change. In the second novel, Tempest Rising, there's the middle child who has this real sunny disposition and everybody loves her. And one of my sisters insists that that's her. And it's not you. I promise, it's not you, right? This is a fictional character. She's not hearing it. But no, in most cases they are just, they may start off as a little germs of people I know or have known, but once they pass through the imagination, they morph into really unrecognizable.
Like your sister, I'm quite sure some people who read your book, they point at people like Ethel or Noon and say, "Oh, I know that person." Because Ethel reminds me of a woman in a painting that I have. Other than your sister, you get a lot of people who say, "Yeah, I know her."
Not really. No, I don't. They may say that the characters remind them of someone, which is good because who said achieve find the specific and you achieve the universal. That when it means that if I have depicted a character so specifically, that character then becomes kind of universal without being a stereotype. And so that's what I'm going. But no one has ever.
That's interesting.
No. When I turned to blues dancing, my editor took me out to lunch and said, "So I have to ask you, Diane, did you ever do heroin?" I was like, "You're not so well about it." I never did, but thank you. Yes.
So let's talk a little bit about the writing process. What sparked you to finally sit down and write?
I had, I've been putting it off for a long time, and I just, I was listening to this, trying not to listen to this voice that was telling me to write, and I was actually on a work trip, and I was finishing a presentation true to form that was in the after lunch time slot, so I was working on the presentation during lunch up in the hotel room. And it was in D.C. and there was an artist being featured on the local news. I just had the TV on for background noise, and I stopped and listened to her story. Who she had never had any formal art training, and they asked her, "How did you do this? How did you come? This art is incredible." And she said that she was led. She talked in very religious terms of being led by the Holy Spirit. She said she was sitting on her couch with her children running around the couch. and she was unemployed, and she was like, Lord, what am I doing with my life? And she said a voice came in her head and said, why aren't you painting? And she said, painting? And then she borrowed money from her sister, and she talked about being led, in very religious terms, like the Holy Spirit told her what paint to buy, what canvas, and I mean, even from the confines of the television, it was pretty incredible. And I just listened to her, and my mouth hung open, and I realized that, I was employed. I mean, I had children running around, but I was at least gainfully employed. But I had also been hearing a voice, why aren't you writing? And
That was a literal voice.
yes, why aren't you? But just as she said, the voice said to her, why aren't you painting? And I had been hearing, why aren't you writing? And so I then, I'm not going to say I went back that next day and got up at 5 o'clock and started writing, but I did then become open to it. And that this is something that I really just could not ignore that voice anymore.
And you remember the Rittenhouse, writers group?
I was a member of the Rittenhouse Writers Group.
How important was that?
It was, I think, very, very important because, number one, I mean, they're like serious readers and writers. And they took the work very seriously. And at times it felt like this is a frivolous thing to do, crawling out of bed at 4:30, 5 o'clock, like, what am I doing? But the way that they approached the work and judged the work and critiqued the work just gave me a confidence that I was in fact doing something. And the critiques were also tremendously helpful and just helped me to push on. And I think it gave me the initial burst of, maybe this can be something. I'll push on. That it's that they took the work so seriously helped me then to also take it seriously and to validate it myself, the time I was spending on it.
And you're still working full time?
I was still working full time. I was working full time.
So how are you finding the time to write?
I had to get up at very early.
Okay, well,
the time that I didn't have to negotiate with anybody else, with other people, with other, with job, with family, like very early in the morning, and I would write, and the process just took me over, and there were times when I would look out, because most women, I'm the alarm clock, and I would write from 5 to 7, and I would look up, and it was 8:15. I was like, oh my God, get up! And it's a scurry. I remember during one semester, I got a letter from the middle school principal saying, please help them get to school on time. It was very embarrassing. It was just, the process got so messy. I mean, I was at my son's house the other day, and they are so organized, dinner time and everything, and when they have days for doing different things, and I was just marveling. I said, oh my God, you were so organized. I said, I don't remember being this organized when you were coming up. And my son said, you think? Well, it was messy, but it couldn't have been done any other way. I mean, it was through the mess, though, I think that, we did find clarity, and we did find a sense of, doing what we needed to do, right? Kind of, yes.
And writing takes hold of you, though.
It does.
And it's always on your mind when you're working on the book, the plot or the characters. It's always there. In the shower, cooking dinner, whatever.
Absolutely, the character. I mean, they become a part of me during the point when I'm writing on the book, and then just the actual process. Like, I have my sister Gwen is like more a journalist, and so she can start and stop. And but if the only way I can describe it is when I'm deep into it, it's like deep sea diving. And to go really down deep in the ocean, you have to suit up. That takes a fair amount of time, your oxygen and all that. And then you go down, right? And you're down there, you're seeing all kinds of amazing things. And if something pulls you back up, you got to go back up because, somebody's calling or something. It's like all of that to get back up to the top, to then do what you have to do. It's like, you can't do that like constantly, because then you're missing everything. Once you get back down there, it's not the same. I mean, it's a lot of energy to go deep like that. So that it does. It takes me over, and I just, you know, sometimes I'm like not all there during parts of the process.
So it
Yes.
sounds like you probably took a little longer to write Tumbling because of all the distractions of life than it did for some of the other books.
No, actually, well, maybe, you know, Tumbling actually took 2.5 years. Others have taken much longer.
Okay.
And I think, I mean, that could be, I'm slower. I'll admit that could be part of it. But I think with Tumbling too, it's just the newness of it. It was just very exciting. So every chance I got, I mean, I was trying to write.
So who are your favorite writers and why?
Oh goodness! You know what? I have fairly eclectic taste, but I mean, of course, I love
Or some of them,
I love what Toni Morrison does with the language. I think Beloved and Sula are two of my favorites. Also jazz. I mean, there's a point in jazz where these two women from entirely different stations are together, and the one woman is missing a button, and the other sews a button on her coat. So you know, like, and I was just reading that, just like the way she did that and came to that, and these women are so different, and here they are, and she's like, you know, she's been harmed by this woman, and she's sewing a button on her coat. It just, I just got chills. And so, you know, just what she does, you know, there's a point in Sula at the end where she says, we were girls, and I was like, oh, I mean, it just like, she will just like have a phrase that just leaves me gasping. So I just, I love what she does.
Okay.
I just love what she does with the language. You know, I think Go Tell It on the Mountain, James Baldwin is just, particular, just the circular nature of the story and the way time is just condensed, and you know, the back and forth and then coming back to it's the structure of that novel. It's just amazing. And Mama Day, I know I'm doing throwbacks. Gloria Naylor, just you know, just what she like with the descriptions, and you know, the nature of the woman working boots, and just it was that book also gave me chills. So absolutely yes.
So when you aren't writing, what do you do for fun?
Well, I mean, writing is also like
it's
part
fun.
of
I know it's fun, but you know,
it's part of what I do for fun. Yes, absolutely. I love word puzzles. I spend a lot of time doing, you know, like the New York Times word puzzles, the word wheel, and all of those. I get, you know, the crossword. It's like when I'm like in the middle of something like that, it's like I'm not worried. I'm not like nothing. Like I love word puzzles. I have grandchildren now, and they are so much fun. It's like a whole new joy that I was not prepared for. What a joy it is.
Will they be in any of your books? Upcoming books? Books of the future?
Yeah. We'll see.
So tell me how Our Gin, your newest book, came about. Then we'll let you listen to you read from it.
Yeah, Our Gin is actually, it's the antithesis of Lazaretto, which takes place, you know, it opens on the night Lincoln is assassinated, and it's set on the Lazaretto on an actual quarantine facility. It existed out just, you know, close to where the airport is now, Tennecomm, and it's a real place. And during its heyday, it actually processed more immigrants than were processed at Ellis Island, but no one knew about Lazaretto.
Right.
So it was fascinating to write about it, but it was just so, I mean, the themes in that novel are very heavy, and the research was very heavy, and oh gosh, when I was finished, it was like, it's just, you know, I think it's a beautiful book, but it's just that it took a lot out of me. It took a lot out of me. And so I was just going to write this real quick, breezy book, The Gin, of these people.
What period is a gin in?
The Gin is contemporary,
Okay.
yes. And you know, these people who moved to a 55 plus active living retirement community. And they kind of refer to their undergraduate years, so they act out, and they're having fun. But as I was working on the book, you know, and I just wanted to keep it like light. I said, I'm going to write this book in a year, which would just be for me. And it still took many years to write, because then it's, well, why are they like this? Well, how did they grow up? Well, where did they, and I'm constantly pulled back into like their past, and I'm pulled back into their trying to figure out things about them. So it was impossible for me to just write this like real breezy, taking a year girlfriend book. I was not able to do it. But that's the genesis of our gin. It still does have, I mean, I was working on it during the pandemic, and there were times when I needed to laugh, and so it has some moments that, like when I wrote, I like laughed and laughed and laughed, and it's so it does, even though it has its heft and it has its, there's a serious nature to it. There were points when I had fun. I had fun writing portions of the book, so it's different. It's a different book in that aspect, and I think it will come out in July. Okay. So I think the publisher is also thinking that it's maybe a beach read.
Yeah,
it's which would be different for me. So and I'm okay with that.
So one thing you mentioned about La Noretta was it was a difficult book. Talk a little bit about what made it so hard.
Well, for one, it needed to be historically accurate. Because when I first started writing it, I thought, oh, this will kind of bleed into the Roaring 20s, and I can have fun with that. And then it's like, my husband's like, no, the Lazaretto closed in 1893, and I'm like, no, but I had to. So I had to honor the facts, and so that made it difficult. Even though it did help me really hone my skills, and like I imagined the scene that was going to take place in John Wanamaker's, but then only Strawbridge's was around, so I had to like reimagine it in Strawbridge's. So I mean, those kinds of things happened. I had it in the old ale house that I knew had been around. And as it turned out, during the years when it would have been, there had been a fire and it was not there, so I couldn't, those things the facts, the darn facts kept getting in my way. And so, I mean, that made it difficult. And then the themes also, these black people in the late 1800s, and just, kind of the things that they endure, particularly one of the characters working in somebody's house, and the things were heavy, and it was just tough. It was tough. Like bringing the plot was involved, and bringing it full circle, which ultimately I was able to do. Thank you, God. But yes, absolutely.
So you want to read?
Sure. Yes. I can write. I'll read just a short blast from Argent, and again, you see it hasn't been published yet, because I'm still reading from the pages. And in this section, Cynthia is one of the main characters, and she becomes close friends with other Gin residents, Locke, who also grew up in West Philly. They didn't know each other at the time. And Tish, who was, a bit of a debutante, who lives in California most of her life, but has come back and moved into the Gin. And also Lavia, who everyone assumes is Indian, and she is very vague about where she's from, and she says, I'm from everywhere and nowhere. But this is the first time that they have, Cynthia has gotten together with them. They've gotten together at Tish's house. So I'll just read it. Cynthia tried not to succumb to the I trust you, you can trust me vibe that was coming for her as the weed high bounced in her head like helium balloons drifting toward heaven, and the wine went down softly, easily. The playlist had mellowed into John Coltrane, his saxophone on in a sentimental mood, was churning her insides to butter. Even the night got in on the act with its silky appearance, pouncing through the skylights. In the brief while she'd lived here, Cynthia preferred the nights with all the windows, walls, and ceilings in these cottages. The daylight had free rein to push itself in and flop like an uninvited guest, pretending to care, but really just trying to fish through her past. The night came with no pretense. She could trust the night. She poured water into her glass from the crystal pitcher floating lime. She gulped the water. She hadn't realized how thirsty she was for the water, for this. What was this gathering anyhow? A kind of drinking of the wine, communion where they testified to what the Lord had brought them through, the way they did at her grandmother's church? She pretended to hate going to church as a child, in her patent leather shoes and newly pressed hair and eyelet cotton dress that topped an itchy crinoline slip, until she got inside and nestled next to Rose, who smelled the Jean to take cologne and spearmint gum. She'd feel a stirring that she feared might be the prelude to the uncontrollable shouting and flailing and dancing of the holy women. She thought she'd rather die than make such a spectacle of herself. So she'd suppress the staring and pretend to be bored and tug her grandmother's arm and ask if they could leave, even though she truly wanted to stay and listen and hear and feel and testify. She started testifying now. She told them how when she was a student, she tried to shoplift a textbook from Penn's bookstore. It was a big book, Shakespeare's complete works, and it's expensive, so I guess my trying to steal the book was a revolutionary act, so I told myself. My boyfriend was with me, and I helped him get the book into the inside of his oversized army coat. It was kind of thrilling because I was that good girl who followed all the rules. We were almost to the exit when this security guard flagged us. White or black guard, Block asked. Does it matter? Lavia asked. Black, Cynthia said. Uncle Tom, Block said. Then this big white one joins him. That's what they do, Block interrupted. The white boy probably wanted to make the first move, but sent the brother to deflect accusations of being racist. Well, they were stealing, weren't they? Lavia asked. Can Cynthia finish her story, please? Tish said. Anyhow, they jostled him through the bookstore, all the white people looking at him like, yeah, that's what they all do. And I didn't do anything, you know. I didn't say anything to defend him. I didn't say it was my idea, that the book was for my class, that I was the one who put the book in his coat. You know, I just let him take the fall. That was so messed up with me. She fought tears, and he was such a good guy. I bet he was fine too, Tish said as she refilled Cynthia's water glass. I only say that because you've got hips, and the girls with hips always landed the fine dudes. Is that true, Lavia asked. Not hardly true, Cynthia said. Where I'm from, all the guys were trying to stand a chance with the tall, slim beauties like you, Tish. She raised her glass in Tish's direction. They were superficial posers, though, Tish said as she reached across the counter to clench Cynthia's glass. I like the bad boys. Somebody willing to steal a textbook from me would have had my heart. Did they actually arrest him, Block said, for a textbook? They did not. He said they tried to scare him with the threat of prosecution, but he knew enough to know the price of the book barely rose to petty larceny. Did y'all stay together after that, Tish asked? We did for a while. I'm not lying when I say he was a good person through and through. Is that who you were talking about when you cried just a bit ago? Tish asked, almost whispering. It is, Cynthia lied. I guess that was the beginning of killing what we had between us. She had to lie. She was really thinking about that other man, Mr. Z. No amount of trust, wine, or weed, hypnosis, medication, laying on the hands, chanting, juju, yoga, psychotherapy, mushrooms, or the holy dance could loosen her enough to talk about him.
Oh, wonderful. I'd like to thank Diane for her wonderful conversation with her. It was great. Janice, do you want to get questions from the audience, or how do you want to work it? Yeah.
Sure. Thank you, ladies. Thank you so much. I'm sorry, audience out there, that I turned my back to you. Let's give both of them. Sherry, you are a reporter. That was awesome. Oh my goodness. So let's take some questions from the audience. We'll do some questions from the audience virtually. Okay. And we're going to ask Chris I'm just trying to get housekeeping. I do see you though. I do. We're gonna ask people from the audience to put their questions in the chat. Chris says yes. That's Chris Rogers, everyone, our program director. So we're gonna ask you, if you're out virtual, if you're streaming in with us, to put your questions in the chat. Chris is gonna monitor that. We're definitely gonna get to you. If you're live, then we're gonna take your question now.
Hi, good afternoon, and thank you for the reading, and thank you for the questions. You mentioned some of my favorite books, and one of them, Mama Day, is one.
Yeah.
And I wondered if you could just speak to, when I read Mama Day, when it was over, I was sad.
Yeah.
I wanted to live with those characters. And so I just wonder, as a writer who writes, and it takes years to do this, you live with those characters. Can you talk about letting go of them as well?
This one's better than that.
Thank you. That's an excellent
Can
question.
you repeat the question just a little bit?
Sure, the question is, she said that she also loved Mama Day, and that when the book was over, she was sad. And can I, as a writer, talk about letting go of the characters? And that is difficult because they become, these are people that I know. And so one thing, it's important for me that the books end on a hopeful note. Just because I suppose I'm hopeful by nature. And so I want there to be, even if the situations don't turn out all well, I want there to still be a sense of hope with the characters, if we imagine them going on. So it's just, that's important to me. I think that makes it easier to let go of the characters because I do like to end with a sense of hope. And but there's also like this letting go. There is an initial sadness. The book is done. They're done. But then, once it goes through the process of the editing and revising, and then the first, second, third pass, and all of that that happens in the publication process, when I finally see the book done in hardcover, it feels finished, and then at that point it's a lot easier, and which is why I haven't done sequels to any of the novels, because I feel like at that point I've gone as far as I could go with those characters, and now they will live and exist forever between these pages. So, but I think leaving on a hopeful note, ending the novels on a hopeful note makes it easier for me.
We do got 2 questions online.
We'll do 2 in the audience and then 2 online. How's that?
Can you talk a little about that publication process that you just mentioned? Because I've been waiting for the next book.
I know you have. I've gotten your texts and emails.
Where's the next book?
Right. The process is, first it goes to, the agent actually brokers the actual deal. And so she's got to get behind it. So first it needs to satisfy, it needs to satisfy me, the actual proposal, which is often not the completed book, maybe 100 pages, and where I think the book will go. The agent then sends it out to editors that she think might be interested. Then there is a contract. The editor will then read whatever it is that I've turned in, and then wait for me to turn it in. Then the editor will then weigh in with their comments. And then there's like the back and forth with the commenting period, and then the revising and more back and forth. And then finally it's accepted, both the editor and I. In this case, I'm still with HarperCollins, with Amistad as an imprint within HarperCollins. And my editor now, Patrick Bass, is just, we're like syncopado. We see things in a similar way. And so at that point, he signs off on the book. Then it goes into the actual in-house editorial process, where first it goes through copy editing, and which is such an humbling process to get back all of these, it's like, did you take grammar or what?
and that's okay. Never my strong suit, but so then it's accepting or rejecting the copy editor's queries, satisfying their queries. I mean, I can't not do something that is part of whatever the style guide they use. I mean, unless it's in quotations or unless I have, a reason for it. I mean, they were not capitalizing sister locks, and I don't know what this style guide says, but I said sister locks should be capitalized, so, I mean, they did. And then there's like that back and forth, down, to the very granular level. And then it goes again to the next level of copy editing. And they, look at things like facts and make sure that the facts are consistent. And so there's that back and forth. And then there's the pass where I get it and I look at it again. And at that point it's in, what was the program that I didn't know? Adobe. So it's like, really? Can't I just like mark it up and send it back? No, it needs to be in Adobe because we're working remotely. So then there's that part of the process. And
So she needs to take your class.
Yes.
Sounds like she needs to take your class. There's a lot of those stuff.
There are a lot of, so that can take weeks, and that all adds on to the process until finally it's in. The uncorrected proofs will be out soon, the galleys, which is the bound book, still like not completely, not all the corrections in. And then the final book, God willing, will be here in July, so. But it's a back and forth process that can take many months once I think I'm done. Mm-hmm.
So we're going to take some questions from online.
Yeah, so we had 2 questions come in. I'm just going to read them both. One's from Paula T. Renfro. She asked, regarding your writing process, do you outline before you write? And the second question is from Dara Williams. And she says, is your writing process still the same now that you are retired? How has being a grandmother affected your writing? So one's about
those are good questions, yeah. I don't outline because when I've tried to outline or say exactly where the novel will go, I'm always stymied because I discover something that makes the outline completely no longer relevant. So, and also when I've tried, if I follow an outline, the work seems to have like an author imposed feel, like I know where this is going and this is where it's going, and I feel like the author's hand is too heavy pushing it along, and so I need to back off and let the story emerge. As I've heard, someone said the story knows what it's about. It's up to the author to figure it out and render it. So outlining doesn't conform to that so well. Mm-hmm. And the second question was, how has the writing changed? Yeah. And you know what? I still, the magic part of the process hasn't changed that much, and that still happens for me very early in the morning, and I still, I still love that. I love that part of just writing and imagining, and that has not changed. I think being a grandmother has opened up even more layers of what I was not aware, and it also helps me know what's important. Like some of the stuff that I used to think was important is not important, and even like when I'm in the middle of a deadline, or I have stuff going on, and it's like, can you watch the kids? And it's like, I wouldn't watch my own kids during parts of the process, but for the grandchildren, yes, bring them over. So it's that. Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
I was going to, because this is supposed to be up close and personal, so yes. I was going to talk to your family. We have Diane's family here, and I was going to say, what's it like living with an infamous writer? Do you separate your mom from the writer, from the, she's famous. So when you guys go out, or the people are, going up to your dinner table and say, you're Diane, I want to get your autograph. What's it like? You can tell us. It's only 25 of us. We won't tell anyone.
Yeah, definitely people come up to me, frequently. And they say, oh my God, your mother is Diane McKinney-Whetstone. Man, we love her. Da, 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 da. I mean, for my job, I used to do like work in the community in West Philly specifically, and it would be difficult to like
Get work done. They wanted to talk about your mom.
And talk about and it's like that doesn't really have much to do with what I was working on, but especially in this neighborhood, But yeah, no, she's definitely, it's she's been doing it for so long that I don't, her first book, when she started writing it, I mean, goodness, I was maybe 10 or something, not much older than, my kids. And so I do remember, like, when she used to work for the government and whatnot, but it's, I was really young, obviously. And mainly this is what I remember. And so I think her descriptions are accurate, about waking up and, early and all that. But yeah, I actually, a friend of mine who I hadn't seen in many years, got married, and like I met his wife, or I saw his wife for the first time since their wedding, and she's never met my mother. And she ran up to me, and I hadn't seen this woman since her wedding, and she goes, oh my God, I fly a lot, and I always feel so excited when I walk through the airport and I see your mother's book there. And I've never met, and this woman's never met my mother, and like, don't know anything, but it's, my mom has had that impact upon people in the city, and people that read her books, and it's definitely a special thing that has benefited me greatly in my life, yeah, for sure.
Thank you so much. So there's a question here in the back.
Well, hi, no, not a question, a comment. I'm Diane's sister, and I'd just like to say that when Tumbling was published, and we had, the big kickoff at Borders, remember Borders along the street? Yeah. Oh, it was packed. So many people came, people who knew us growing up in West Philly, people who knew us through all of our respective colleges, et cetera. We went to public schools, people from Sayre, from West Philly, from our, as I said, all our, just people from who had some association with us and our family over the years since we were local folks, and the success of Tumbling, and it got so much national profile. And for me, as Diane's sister, it was a sense of family pride that we still hold on to. But I won't ever forget that initial kickoff, because our father had just passed the year before, right? It was 96. Mm-hmm. And so, oh God, had he been there. But still, we felt his presence, and our mother, who passed in 77. But it was a huge celebration. We had as much pride, probably, as Diane and Greg. And that's not because, the twins were here, that's why. So they were young. They were young. So I just like to.
You can come up because you're online and they can't see you. So this is Diane's sister, if you want to come up.
I was a little late, so I didn't want to go into the front, but, Yeah, no, so I don't have to repeat that, do I?
No.
Just quickly just say for online, that we take it as a source of family pride from the beginning, and it doesn't diminish. It hasn't diminished over the years. So that's it. That's my testimony.
So are you a younger or older sister?
Older.
Older.
2 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
I like our younger sister, and we're 7 years between us. 7 years between me and the youngest sister.
Okay, and there's another sister?
Yeah. There are 5 of us.
We want everyone to see the family, so come on up, sister. This is up close and personal. You're not going to get this anywhere else but the Robeson.
And in addition, our oldest sister, who is passed away, actually, Gloria was there for the kickoff in '96. She passed later, but she has 2 daughters who are they're more our kind of sisters rather than because they're
sister nieces.
Sister nieces, exactly. And so we're 7 then.
Oh,
the 5 of us and the 2 of them, and
well, I'll say when Diane first started writing Tumbling, first book, she used to tell us about the characters, and I'm writing this book, and And we said, well, what else? Well, what did Noon do? And then what happened with Herbie? And what happened with the church? And so we were so caught up in this book. We believed in it before we even knew where it was going. So we were caught up in the story of it. So it's been wonderful listening to the stories and reading the pages. She'll give me a stack in a box. And I said it was like eating popcorn. I read it as I'm just reading the drafts, and it's been wonderful.
So she still checks in with you guys to talk about the characters.
Oh, sure.
Okay,
Yeah.
so you get very intimately involved.
And we get calls from like Tina, or text, when's the next book? When's the next book? Or even sometimes people outside the area. I was on a Zoom recently. There were folks from the Midwest, the East Coast. Or West Coast. I was just meeting. And somebody said, "Are you related to the author, Diane McKinney-Whetstone?" I was like, "Yeah, that's my sister." So yeah, so it's
So great. So we're gonna
grandchildren
get her
and-
grandchildren
yes.
out.
And my daughter and son and husband.
Yeah, your husband.
Right before we close off. So come on, family. We want to get a family shot. We want to thank you, family, for sharing your mom with us, with the world, and we appreciate it. Oh, that's terrific.
And you know, Greg, like when I first started writing, he was like, "What's wrong with her? What's going on? Is she, like, what is it?" And he just, I guess I changed, and he couldn't, I was saying, you know what, maybe I'm thinking about leaving. He said, "You can't make your job. What are you talking about?"
For the record, in my own defense, me and her dad
My father
shared the
same
same
thing. Yes.
We thought she was literally
Oh, but
losing
he
her
got,
mind
once
when
he
she
got
first
on the
started writing.
bandwagon, he is still my biggest fan, so.
Oh, I am now.
Yes.
But at the time, it was such a dramatic change of lifestyle. I mean, number one, like she started getting up at 4:30 in the morning, 5 o'clock. Me and the kids are sleeping. What is she doing this, Dad? And then they'd come to me and ask me questions. I said, I have no idea.
So you could literally see like a change coming over you. You're like, oh Lord, here comes a book.
And it was interesting that this was right around that time, when a certain person was turning a certain age, who I'll leave to her to discuss, because I don't feel safe. But at a critical point in her life, she decided she wanted to do this.
So we want to, again, just give the family, isn't this a beautiful family? Thank you. Anything else you guys want to say?
I'll just add, I'm the daughter-in-law, so I married into this beautiful family. I'll just say that.
We don't say in-law, we just say daughter. Yeah.
I mean, especially in light of Women's History Month, like to have left your job when you have young kids for working for the federal government. Y'all know you can't get fired from the federal government. So she had like a guaranteed job for like a long time, and she left to write. Like that's really incredible.
Yeah.
And impressive.
Okay, why me and Dad were, not on board initially.
Do you guys want to say something about your grandmother? Yeah. You know your grandmother's famous?
Kennedy, you don't want to say anything?
Are you going to be a writer when you grow up?
I don't know.
Are you writing right now?
Sort of.
Tell me where you're writing.
I'm kind of writing at home, and I like writing cards.
Oh, wonderful! And what's your name? What's your name? We're going to remember that.
Kennedy.
Kennedy.
What's your full name?
Kennedy-Whetstone.
What's your middle name?
McKinney.
And you want to introduce your sister?
Ryan McKinney-Whetstone.
Thank you so much. Thank you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
I have another daughter, his twin is in Silver Spring. Taiwo.
He has a twin.
He has a twin
Twin
sister,
sister.
Taiwo, and she's in Silver Spring with her children, her husband Aaron, and her children Josephine and Michael.
So Aaron, if you're, are they watching virtually?
Tyrell, Aaron, Josephine, and Michael are watching, yes.
Hello, Aaron.
Tyrell, Josephine, and Michael.
Michael.
Uh-huh.
We see you guys.
Yes.
So, in closing, we don't want to close, but we know we have to. Thank you all so much for being with us virtually. Yeah, you can give them a round of applause for being out there virtually. As I said, we had over 100 and some people virtual, and we were growing as I left. This is what the new book looks like. Can we see that on the screen? Chris, can they see that? So we have these beautiful postcards, and we have the bookmarks. I probably don't need the microphone, but we have those. So what happens when you buy this book is coming in July. We're going to be lined up in June waiting for this book. We're going to start lining up at Hakeem's bookstore, Yvonne, we're going to start lining up. So if you get your book, when you get your book from Hakeem's bookstore, you will get a bookmark and you will get this postcard that says Parlor Talks with acclaimed author Diane McKinney-Whetstone, presented by the Paul Robeson House and Museum and Hakeem's bookstore. You're not going to get this from Amazon. Let me tell you right now. So you have to go to Hakeem's bookstore. And it has a beautiful quote from Diane on the back. Can we see this online? So what you can do, here's what you can do. For this book, you can call Hakeem's bookstore. You can go to our website, and Chris is going to put the information in the chat of Hakeem's bookstore. You can call them. You can go to their website, and they will start taking pre-orders. Don't do that too early. 2 weeks before the book, do that. Now, right now, we have, at the bookstore, we have Tumbling. If you're like me, you read Tumbling when it first came out, and I started rereading it. And guess what? I'm energized all over again, because a lot of these characters, Noon and Irby, and all of these characters that are dancing around in your head, and now they're dancing around in my head. You have to reread this. So she has this available now at Hakeem's bookstore. We also have Lazaretto. Okay. This is the newest book. This is the newest book. This is amazing. Lazaretto. So today we have these books for you to purchase. What the process is going to be, if you're online, you can just call Hakeem's bookstore or email, and we can get you a copy of this book that will be signed. Will be signed. Today, you will also get your copy today. You'll sign it. You'll go back to Yvonne's bookstore right here in the back of the room. You'll purchase your book, and then you'll come up to Diane, and she will sign it. So those are our housekeeping notes. We also have refreshments out on the porch. I know it's a little chilly out there, but we do have refreshments out there for you. And if you also would like to see the museum, we have a couple of our docents here. We have Terry and we have Joyce Mosley. And Joyce is an extended family member of the Robeson family. So if you get a tour from Joyce, you'll get a totally different perspective, because she's talking from being a family member. We also have the infamous Miss Vinoka Michael, who can give you some intimate details, not only about the house, but about the man himself. So having said all of that, we are out. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you, Diane. Thank you.